Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Command Q, the podcast for quitters. We're your hosts. I'm John Pelfrey.
And I'm Maari Casey.
And today we're tackling a subject that may spark some controversy. Some of us do it in the morning. Some of us do it all day long. Some of us are very particular about it. Some of us don't care at all. There's a million ways to do it, and there's a lot of people who are definitely doing it wrong.
Exactly. And that's why we've made up our minds to quit settling for disappointing coffee. Life is too short for mediocrity, and we're making the changes where it counts. So here to help us do that is Jonathan Stewart, professional coffee master and customization manager at Fellow, the luxury coffee company based in San Francisco. So joining us today, all the way from California, please welcome John Stewart.
Were you allowed to drink coffee as a child? What's your earliest sort of memory of coffee?
Yeah, my earliest memory of drinking coffee as a child was seeing my grandpa drink coffee growing up as a kid, and he'd do coffee and cigarettes all day, every day. And I'd have that very nostalgic memory of that with him. And then I started early on just putting a pound of sugar in there. So at the bottom of the cup, after you drank your coffee, you could just scoop it up with a spoon. Don't recommend it. But then just to add to that, it really changed for me in college as well when a friend of mine introduced me to specialty coffee. I was doing sugar and milk for years and years and years as a kid. And then I had my first cup of specialty coffee, some really well-prepared coffee. And that kind of blew my mind. What's possible with coffee.
So suddenly you weren't just drinking the chock full of nuts or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I referenced chock full of nuts. That's what we drank when I was trying to stay up to study or whatever, because it was cheap and you could buy it by the giant tin in the grocery store. And
nice.
You got your Mr. Coffee and you're making it by the 12 cups at a time. Mine was similar. There was a coffee shop across the street from our campus, Bongo Java in Nashville, Tennessee. That was the first place that I ever had like good coffee. Sort of changed my life, opened up my mind to different things. It was also the social atmosphere of going to a coffee house. This was a legit coffee house. So kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Maari?
It was definitely growing up. It was like my dad in the Folgers can and the Mr. Coffee. And it was just the worst tasting thing ever. And he drank that all the way through. And it was like cigarettes and coffee, I think, were his breakfast. Pretty much. I went to school in Atlanta. I was even telling John this when we were talking about it. I was like, I got so into coffee because we did all of our, we'd go to class and we'd concept with I would end up going camping with the baristas at our local Caribou Coffee because we spent so much time together that we're like, it just made sense. Like, hey, you're my friends. But I still remember like how much time we spent at that coffee shop. I mean, to the point where I had like a drip coffee maker at home. I had a French press. I had like a little espresso machine. I was just like fully committed to coffee. And I'm pretty sure that I was sweating and smelling like coffee all day. But it's got me through that period. And honestly, the first several years of advertising and late nights and stuff like that. So I think I made up for it once I jumped in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I made up for last time for sure. Just jump camping with the baristas. I mean, that's one way to learn everything there is to know about coffee.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
So how did you go from I've had my first taste of good coffee to going like, I'm really into this and I want to learn how to make it well, how to maybe become a barista, all of that. How did you make that jump? What was that journey like?
Yeah, it's similar to what you said, Maari. I found a friend that was really into it, a home barista, and he opened my eyes to this coffee shop in Detroit called Anthology Coffee. Shout out to them. For me too, I was like a college kid. I had no money. So it became this economical, okay, maybe I can learn how to do this at home and make pretty good coffee for less than it costs to buy a coffee every day. So for me, it just started as I learned a little bit about it and bought some home equipment and started to play with how to make my own coffee. I was really bad at first and get better and better and better and better. So it took me diving in that way to really, really get into it more.
I bought a very cheap espresso maker in college, under $100 or whatever. I could never successfully get it to make a good cup. And it was probably 90% user error. Even though it was cheaper, it was probably all me. Because when my friend
that's tough.
Well, I had a friend who worked at a Starbucks and he could make stuff out of it that was decent, but I didn't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
When I want my caffeine, I want it now.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait 30 minutes and measure it all out and all that.
You hear the word espresso, it's supposed to be espresso fast. So you got some time. You expect that, but there's a whole science that goes into the espresso side of things where you have to really get in there or else you're sitting there for a half hour trying to play with all the parameters and everything. So I totally get that.
Tell us a little bit about that, sort of the science of it, the parameters of it, all of that. How did you go about, was it trial and error that you sort of learned how to do this, or did you have some resources that you were looking into? I don't know when you went to college exactly. For me, YouTube wasn't an option. I couldn't learn from YouTube or anything.
Oh yeah, YouTube is so huge. For me, I could get on YouTube at the time, but just my local community, I'd go to the cafes and see what they're doing. Then I got on YouTube and found some resources there, a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of all of the above. For me, early on, it was finding resources that were pretty straightforward. I found a coffee shop in California called Cat and Cloud Coffee, and one of their owners, Chris Baca, made pretty intuitive videos that were simple for the barista, getting into the science and things of coffee, ratios, how much coffee in, how much water out, brew time, grind size. There's all that you can really get into. So early on, some of my friends were getting into it. So it's like this camaraderie thing where you just, oh yeah, mine tasted like apricot. And I got this really nutty taste. And I'm actually starting to taste like blueberry flavor at home with no creamer, no added fruit or any kind of thing, or syrup. But yeah, so a little bit of that, just like poking around. And then also, I think it was challenging at the beginning because YouTube was so vast and there was a lot of random information, who knows what, trying to find credible resources. That was the other piece of it. And then also testing things. If I hear something that's, well, you should jump up and down and spin 3 times and your coffee will be better. I might be like, okay, maybe I'll try it, but maybe that's not the one. I'll just find whatever worked for me and just kind of like find my own findings, my own style, and what works for me.
I feel like coffee, beer, wine, it attracts, there's all these different types of people who enjoy it, who like love to understand it and tinker. And I think you're uncovering the science behind why things taste a certain way and all those different factors. Yeah. And it's a little bit of, I bet you're into puzzles. I'm just like understanding.
Yeah. I do.
But my husband, he got really into home brewing for several years before we had kids. We had time to sit down and we liked beer and the community of craft beer. And we liked going to breweries, and it became this more than just the drink itself. It also became the community and the destination. And like, now we're going to be here. And then he would be home brewing and he'd be like, what if I put in orange rind? What is that going to taste like? Oh, that tastes terrible because it reacted with this thing. It was interesting because it became like science that you can consume in a way and try things. And then also just talk to other people, see what they were doing and, where they found success and where they didn't. It was a really cool community side of things. I think, when we grew up, obviously that didn't exist in coffee. It was really just this kind of functional beverage that people needed to get through the day. Right. With all the different craft coffees and specialty coffees opened up this whole new era of things being the next level and adding that whole community side of things, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's really what drew me in. Some of my early experiences with coffee shops and cafes in the industry were sometimes pretentious. Like they would push you away, which I didn't love. And in my early experiences, it was sometimes that way. You went and got a coffee over here. Oh, wow. Put my nose up at you. I think as it grew, it became more accepting of whatever. People can get really nerdy and really opinionated. But as a greater community, there's a lot of acceptance, people to the table. This is the way to drink better coffee overall. That is what, ended up drawing me. I think I found different pockets that existed, but it wasn't everywhere in the beginning. It's supposed to be fun. I like this, like all the things you said, really community driven. Yeah.
Before I met you, you worked in Detroit at a Ford. Is that right? As a project manager?
Yeah.
When you worked at Ford, were you still the office coffee guy? Were you the guy that that store that rolled the coffee pot and everything? And people were like, well, if John doesn't make it, it's not going to be any good.
I think when I was there, I would bring my AeroPress in. What an AeroPress is, it's kind of portable, really, it makes pretty good coffee. So I was at the time really getting into coffee. And so I'd bring my AeroPress in, make it at work with my kettle. I was known as the coffee guy by the end of my time as I got more comfortable when I was at Ford.
It could be a good character in a movie. Add that character into Office Space somewhere.
We should remake Office Space in a modern way. And there could be the extra coffee guy and like the little line of people outside his cubicle.
Yeah.
Good coffee.
That would be great. You worked at Fountain in Raleigh, and then you sort of landed your dream job working at Fellow and up and moved to San Francisco.
Okay. I'm going to go. So I'm going to touch on a couple of things you mentioned throughout the call. First, espresso. We talked about espresso a little bit, and it was just so complex and everything, and I didn't know where to start with that. So my initial thing was just pour over filter coffee forever. So while I was working at Ford, I did a part-time job where I would leave Ford. I'd work from 7 to 3 and I'd go straight to the coffee shop. I worked till midnight. And I did that every weeknight to try to learn espresso, learn coffee more and see if I could do that full time. So working it's called the Verde Oasis in Michigan, based out of Detroit, and they were amazing. So I worked with them for a while. I was in the corporate world doing operations at Ford and then trying to play on the side at the coffee shop and then being able to move down to Raleigh and be at Found Coffee and Kitchen, which was like great coffee program. And it took me a minute to even work up to get on, they call it on bar on the espresso machine because they were serious stuff. So that was cool. So then I was learning even more and more about coffee. And then just thinking that phase of my life was a little bit about this work for my future, down the road, do I want to have a cafe, own a cafe, run a cafe? Instead of just launching my own cafe, I wanted to feel it out. So luckily it worked out where we could do that. And that's funny. So then I was there for a few years learning, playing with coffee, and something opened up that was like a marriage of my passion and work history. So now I'm a fellow working in their customization department, which is on the operations side. But I get to work with co-branding with huge coffee shops, specialty coffee shops, corporate companies like yourself. And so that's just been really cool. For me, it's been a perfect blend of what I love. I'm a huge fan of Fellow in general. I think we make the best coffee products there are. I get to see them before the rest of the world. It's been an awesome journey just to think about 7 years ago where I was and where I'm at today and how things just work out. So it's been really fun.
So who are Fellows sort of like target people? Would I be a target customer or is this just for nerds? Like real coffee?
No, not just for nerds. I think Fellow does a good job because we're definitely very known in the coffee space and the specialty coffee space. But now we're in Crate and Barrel, we're in Nordstrom, we're in Williams-Sonoma, we're just launching in Target. So I think we're hopeful to become just more of a main brand for anybody, for everyone and anyone, for the coffee nerd, to the coffee curious, to somebody who just wants something aesthetically beautiful. If you've seen our kettles or our new coffee maker yet, we got this automatic coffee maker that is kind of life-changing if you're used to pour-over life. I've been doing pour-overs every day for 20 years, and now I can push a button and it makes as good of a pour over as I can, if not better sometimes. So it's actually, So I think with that, I think that's another step in the direction of it's a company that can be for everybody. It's one of these where it can be like a classic coffee maker. You fill the water, push a button, it'll brew. Or you can get granular and have a 1 to 16.5 ratio, 200 degrees on your bloom phase, 4 pulses, change the temperature every time. You get really in the weeds, but it's also going to be super easy. So really excited. I think hoping to be a company that's for everybody. I think we're moving in that direction. Yeah.
That's cool. I can tell you my experiences with these mugs, and this is not a Fellow commercial by any way, and we are not sponsored by Fellow.
Are we taking a turn?
But when you went out there, we knew you, and Maari ordered some of these mugs, and I will tell you that it's a really great experience just drinking with this thin lip. I have a buddy that I didn't know had one of these as well. He made the exact same comment to me one day. We were just like, "Oh, you have the same?" And he's like, "I just love drinking out of this thing."
I love that. Okay, I'm going to take that back to our team. I was in Vegas last week. That was one of the big sellers is the lip and the ceramic interior where you should retain the coffee taste, not as much metallic taste or anything like that. And the lip's really drinkable. Yeah, we have so many fun things. I mean, if I could send you all of our products, you'd be like, oh yeah, look at this, look at this. We just came out with some...
send us a box.
I am in the customization department. It looks like you probably need to re-up with another on-company round.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we pat all of our mugs.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, it's like a wine and cocktail similar to that, but you can take it to the park. We're very intentional with whatever we do, trying to make it really good for tasting for the best you can.
Can I put in a product request?
Product request, what is it?
This is going to be perfect for us to get into the conversation about how to make bad coffee or make better coffee better.
Yeah.
Since I'm an old person and I'm a parent, I tend to...
Yeah.
I tend to reheat my coffee in the microwave because I make it and then something happens and I'm like, crap.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. So can you guys make a microwave safe old person cup?
Oh my gosh.
I was looking at the Ember mugs that you can reheat. I was like, ooh, fellas should do those reheatable. A reheatable mug.
Those are nice. Okay, so there's definitely some opinions on either side of this.
Besides, I told you microwaving coffee.
Yeah.
I had a friend when I lived in Michigan said you should definitely microwave Coca-Cola. Apparently that's a thing. You get it hot and drink it. Never tried it, but either way, to each their own.
Okay.
I could take that back. And I just think it's one of those things where even if it's like a hot plate, that's one thing with our coffee maker. We don't have it because it can burn the coffee after a while. I don't know if I can recommend microwaving any of our products, but those things do seal for 24 hours hot, cold, dual walled. Actually, I'm drinking out of this one today. It's another double walled. This is one of ours as well, the taster cup. All really nice lid or lip as well. But yeah, we have things to keep them hot for a long time. We don't necessarily have anything like that yet for making it hot again.
I gotta put the lid back on it.
Yeah, there you go. We do have a different lid you could use. We have a slide lock. I can send it over, but you just slide the lid, pour it, then close it, so you're not open the full time. Might help. Yeah. We got some options for you.
Yeah.
I had one of the ones that was tall with the slide lock, and I left it in the Caribbean somewhere.
So
it's on somebody's boat sailing
somebody's
away.
Getting good use of it out in the Caribbean.
Somebody's enjoying it. I was very sad. And I was like,
that is sad. Oh, yeah.
So today's topic, what we're actually talking about today is how to quit drinking bad coffee. How do we quit doing that? And so our first question around how to quit drinking bad coffee, what do most people get wrong about coffee, just in general? What do they do wrong most often?
I think the biggest thing that can be a really quick change is coffee and freshness. You go to the grocery store and you don't think about the roast date. It can be stale. It can really change the taste of your coffee. If you're not looking for that, you're just like, all right, I'm going to get a can of whatever. Coffee comes from a fruit like a cherry. It's meant to be. There's certain lives where it can be really vibrant, really, really tasty, and then it can really taper off and get pretty rough. But you think about that if you're not thinking of it as a fruit or something that should have freshness to it. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Probably my second thing is water. It's a really easy fix. Water makes up about 98% of coffee. Only 2% to 3% is soluble. So another big thing to really quickly change the taste of your coffee is use purified water for coffee. There's minerality in coffee, and you can get really nerdy with that, balancing salinity and all the levels of everything. Just like to really change the game right off the bat, don't use water that tastes bad. If it tastes like metallic dirt, your coffee might taste like that too if you use that water. That's another big thing that is really helpful to change your coffee game right off the bat.
Okay. So we've got the freshness of the coffee beans. We've got the filter. What about the method for making it? Because there's a million different ways to make coffee. Yeah. I've even been in coffee shops where it looks like a test tube is going up and down and all around.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called, but
drip, cold brew, exact thing you're talking about.
I didn't know that there was any other way than just your general.
Yeah.
Your basics. What about the method of brew? You talked about pour over. So if I want to get serious about it, is that the way I want to start with a decent pour over set and then just be aware of my beans,
the water,
and freshness and the water for a little while? And what's the best way?
Yeah, I think there are definitely many ways, but I think it depends person to person. If you're Maari was saying, I guess I'm one where I want to get in there and solve something. It's almost like a science project that turns into like all these things. But if you're somebody who just wants awesome coffee and you have a busy life and everything, you got life's taking over the place, I would say there are two avenues. Maybe first is French press. They're different. There are a couple types of coffee. There's immersion coffee, and French press is an immersion. So you just get your grounds, you throw it in the French press, and you pour hot water on. You let it sit for 5 minutes or whatever. You can do more or less, depending on how strong you want it to be, and you push and go. If you have great water, great coffee, freshly roasted, within probably 1 to 3 weeks, then that's going to make a good cup of coffee. It's a little bit more bold than a pour over. And it has a bit more of a mouthfeel, so it's a little bit heavier on the mouth, but really tasty. You can get a lot of awesome flavors, bold flavors. So I would say that's one easy route. You can do French press as far as a brewer. There's definitely levels to what you might need for a home setup, just as far as there are kettles, there are grinders, things you can get into. But I would say, to your question, probably French press for one person. And then if you're wanting to, I say pour over is great for another person. It depends on what your kitchen looks like. You might want to accessorize and make things pretty. I definitely recommend Fellows. They have actually both. You can do the Fellows pour over. Another good brand is Hario. They do a good pour over setup that's pretty cheap. So comparable, both make great cups of coffee. If you want cups that are a little bit more clarity, you can then a French press, a little bit lighter body. You can taste some of those nuances, depending on the person you talk to. You can get those out of both. That's another route. Super easy. Pour it in, French press, good to go. Other one takes 4 minutes each morning. Awesome. Great. It's also like a great routine in the morning. Very zen. Have your moment with your coffee, pour in circles and Just take some time before you dive into the day. That's another great route. So those would be the first steps, I'd say, for whichever type of person you are.
Okay. So we've got our methods there. And then the next question.
Yeah.
This is the one that stupefies me the most, ratios. I have a kitchen scale, but do I want to use it in the morning? I'm much more of like, how many tablespoons? If I take a tablespoon and make it level, how much water should I put per tablespoon? In my mind, that's the easiest way to do it. So how can we think of ratios when we're just, coffee, beans, and water?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. My biggest recommendation is to have a scale to some degree where you can know the ins and outs of it if you really want to repeat a recipe. There's definitely a workaround to find. So there's a difference between, I would say, myself and Rochelle. So like, I'll weigh mine every morning, but she knows the amount of scoops she's going to use and makes coffee that's great to her. So another nice thing is on our new coffee brewer. Sorry, this is not going to be an endless fellow commercial, but it gives you both. Say you want 4 cups of coffee, and that's 450 milliliters of water. It also gives you like, okay, that's going to be 30 grams of coffee or 2 tablespoons. There are things out there that give you both that you can have. Even other coffee makers, I've seen classic coffee makers will have a recommended scoop size. You can get into the weight versus volumetrics. There's a lot more variability if you're not weighing it. But again, if you're not, you can definitely get great coffee your own way. It becomes about what you like, because there's good coffee, better beans, but then it gets into preference. I might like mine. Might like my coffee to be a little stronger than a lot of people. And some people might want theirs a little bit less strong. And it just from person to person can really change. It's one of those crazy things where it's very, very vast, the capability, the possibilities.
Well, then you throw in the type, like how it's ground. Is it fine? Is it medium? Is it all those little things? And it's, then that would also affect how much you're scooping in there.
How much you're scooping. And then also brew time. The grind side directly affects how long it's going to brew, how much long the hot water is going to be in contact with the grounds. That affects if it's over extracted and a little muddy, or if it's under extracted and tastes watery or tea. So there's something dialing in there too. And I think with that, you can do one of two things. If you don't own a grinder, I think I would recommend going. One of the things I think I wanted to share was like things to look for in a cafe. But if you go to a cafe, they're a well-known cafe or a renowned cafe in the specialty coffee space. Tell them what kind of brew method you do at home. Say I do a pour over. What could you grind it for this type of pour over? And honestly, they can grind your beans, even though the best method is to grind fresh right before you brew. But also, if you're getting great coffee from a coffee shop, that's a fine entry into getting really good coffee, and they can dial it in for whatever brew method you're wanting to use at home. So, yeah, I think that's something that there's all sorts of rabbit holes you can go down in this, but there's definitely some options if you're just wanting to learn a little bit more about it.
So what you're saying then is, instead of going to the grocery store and picking something up that's already ground, probably weeks or more ago, go to your local cafe, buy some beans from there, and have them grind the beans for you based on your brew method at home. That's just going to make a huge difference.
Huge difference, because you can definitely, say Whole Foods, you're going there, they might have some that's a month old, but they may have some that's roasting. You can find it. I'd say look for the roast date, and you never know. You might get lucky there, but then it could just be for a basic batch brewer. You can definitely use this too. Going to a cafe is a great way because they're professionals, the baristas, and they can help you out. In my experience, that's their job in hospitality to say, oh, you have this, I know this. Or you can ask somebody at the their coffee shop they work with, what would you recommend? They'll grind something. It might not be perfect every time, but it can get you close. It's a good way to go, I think.
Okay. I've mail ordered coffee before, but I don't think I've ever actually gone into a cafe and asked them to grind it for me. I bought whole beans before. But I
started earlier if I was in a pinch. Sometimes when I'm traveling and I don't have my grinder or whatever, I think that was how I stumbled on that. But yeah, it's not bad. And I think another thing in that way, if you're really wanting to get more into coffee, I think baristas are a really good outlet and say, what do you like right now? Out of the coffees they have, what's your favorite? And it might not, maybe it's the opposite of what you normally go for. Say it's got like blueberry citrus notes where you're normally like chocolate and nugget and nuts. I would say try that or get what you like. We'll be in a restaurant and I'll be talking to the waiter, waitress, and I'll say, what do you recommend? What do you like right now? What do you recommend? It's classic, but I like to hear what they're thinking. They're the ones doing it all the time. They have to try it every day. The biggest thing I'll say is don't ask them and then not go with the recommendation. If you ask, say, give me 2 or 3. But if you go opposite direction, I'm like, okay, what do you even ask for? I try to go with the recommendation, even if I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like this.
Thinking about the cafe a little bit more, I love that as a recommendation. My dad always said, when you go to a restaurant, always order the special, because that's what the chef's
I like
preparing that night.
Yeah.
It's fresh. You know, they bought it specifically for that meal. So it's kind of the same thing, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of that, which is like, what are some things that I don't want to do when I'm at a cafe? Like, I don't want to ignore the recommendation if I ask for it, but also how many pumps of sugary substances
Ask
do
for
I
whipped
need?
cream.
How many? How much whipped cream is too much whipped cream? You know, I don't know, the weird recipes that people come up with on TikTok and Instagram versus the cafes they're talking about and what they specialize in. If I go into one of those and I don't want to appear like a noob, but also really don't know what I'm doing, what can I do there to get a good cup of maybe an espresso drink that I've never tried before?
Sure. That's a good layered question. I think a good way, like you said, honestly, is just thinking about coffee. They do specials all the time. There are a couple of things to this. When I'm going into a cafe, when I'm looking at what they're using, and this is not always best practice, but if I see a machine that I know, I'm like, okay, that's a Marzocco espresso machine. They might know what they're doing. I see a grinder that I know, a Milk-on Egg or something, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty decent grinder. The other thing I would look for is syrup. If I see house-made syrups, they made them in-house in their own bottles. No shade at the other, you just like mass-produced syrups and things like that. But when it becomes like this in-house thing, it's like this recipe they created. I think that one, it has a shelf life. You have to, those can only last for so long. And a lot of times they're planning their menus just like a chef would. So the lead barista or the manager or some of the team is working on menus and what works with this type of coffee, what works with this type of seasonal drink. So honestly, if I'm new to coffee, I like my coffee a little sweet. I would say get a latte. And if the coffee shop is doing their own syrups, they look like they have a good program, get whatever specialty, like whatever drink that they specialize in that looks good to you. If they have a pumpkin spice latte that looks like it slaps, you should get that. A mocha, like chocolate and coffee go hand in hand. So a mocha latte, and I think a good intro is a latte. It's going to be more milk. Generally, it goes from espresso going all the way up to latte, where espresso is 2 ounces of espresso. A latte also has 2 ounces of espresso, but it has 10 ounces of milk, whereas a cappuccino has 4 ounces of milk, but it's the same amount of espresso in each. So for people that are new to coffee, you probably want a little more milk. You want it to last longer. It's not going to be quite as strong. And you can graduate and work yourself down. Start with a latte, then maybe next time try a cappuccino that they specialize in, and that'd be a little bit less milk, but also awesome. So you can ease yourself into like more and more of the coffee taste.
How do you feel about those things like the pumpkin spice latte or the frappuccinos or as a barista? You know, I walk in to a place that you work, and I'm used to going to Starbucks or whatever, and somebody walks in and they're like, "Hey, can I have a caramel frappuccino?" How do you handle that?
So that's a whole language you have to learn in the specialty coffee industry. If you come from a place that is welcoming and centers in hospitality, you want to get them what they're looking for. So if somebody comes and they want a caramel macchiato, or generally shops don't always do like the frappuccino, but I'd say we could do a iced vanilla latte, and it's going to get you pretty close. Some coffee shops do really good in-house whipped cream, which is great too. That's my thing. I think I was definitely at one point in my coffee journey, just, why would you even order that? You don't know what you're doing. That's going to taste awful. But now I'm like, you should enjoy what you like. And if I can get you a better coffee, better milk, or better water, you're going to have a way better experience. You're like, okay, I really like this. And that might open you up to being like, oh, I want to just like try this coffee black at some point. And that was what was eye-opening to me. It's not that I don't like sweetness anymore. I can find a coffee and they have all these wild processing ways, anaerobic, just bringing all these random flavors to coffee where I'm like, oh, I can get this really, really neat blueberry note. I keep coming back to that red fruit note, like all these wild things without adding anything. So that's a really exciting thing for me. But other people, what you like, you want that caramel taste, then you can have it really well done in a really good way at a specialty shop.
Yeah.
Your version of happy coffee time is different than other people's version of happy coffee time, but it's still happy coffee time.
It's still happy coffee time. Yeah. For sure. We're all getting that caffeine. The main thing, we're getting the caffeine we need and enjoying people. And
That's what I mean. I think it's good to put up too, that it's so much because coffee can be intimidating. If you're not used to drinking it, it can be, I mean, it's less so for me, for a lot of us now, because there's so much coffee culture. But when you're coming from a small town or you're going to a big city, it can be intimidating when you don't know how to order, especially in a big city or in a different country where there is a procedure and a process for ordering. Yeah. But I think it's like when you think that coffee is 50% coffee and 50% culture, then you can kind of relax a little bit and be like, it doesn't necessarily matter what they're ordering because they're just here to participate and being in the space and talking to their friend. I think anybody can kind of appreciate that. And so it's a little like less alarming if you kind of go into a space. And some spaces you get that sense. You walk found it, for example, is one of those spaces. Yeah. You go in there, it just feels like a place to sit down. So I think I do feel like there's more of that now as far as spaces that feel safe for all different types of coffee and people than there has been before.
I think you're right. It's interesting too. When I visited Spain or Europe or whatever, I felt like I needed to do a little bit of research. Like, how do they take their coffee? Maybe look into how do they drink their coffee in the US? How do you drink it in Spain? What's the norms? Because even there is un cafe is like a cappuccino, or it's something different than I was expecting. I think it was like an espresso, and I'm saying coffee in my mind. So anyway, it's different community culture, but I agree. 50% culture, 50% the drink. Yeah, that's really special. I like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to explore the world too. You explore it through food, you can explore it through coffee. Everybody makes it differently. So tell us, what is the best cup of coffee that you've ever had?
Wow. Okay.
We should have given you those ahead of time.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, you can give us a couple, but we're just curious. We're putting you on the spot here.
No, that's great. I think best cup of coffee I ever had to be, I have to go way back to my original mind-blowing cup of coffee. Was an Ethiopian coffee roasted anthology in Detroit. And it's just like my mirror shattering moment where, this is something that's capable out of this random drink that I've poured sugar into my whole life. So it's got to be that one. I was just like sitting there drinking. I'm like, what in the world am I drinking? What do you do this? And they're like, oh no, this is just the coffee. It's not like we infuse it with anything. It's just naturally sweet and pulling out these wild flavors. So for me, that's got to be it. I think that's my favorite. I want to share one more recent. There are all sorts of coffee roasters all over the world. I'm in the Bay Area now in San Francisco, and there are a couple of coffee shops doing great things. One, High Energy Coffee Movement, and this other one called Golden Goat Coffee. I went the other day, and there's a roaster out of somewhere in some European country. It's called Dat Coffee Roasters. And it's just it was a very like experimental. They're getting into anaerobic fermentation and different things. So I had that. My favorite drink is a 1-in-1. So it's like an espresso shot pulled into 2. So it's 2 ounces, but 1 ounce of strictly espresso. And the other one it's like a macchiato, just splashed with milk. And that's my favorite drink. So I got that there the other day. This is the most recent memorable, like really funky, fun one. I had it a second way as a cappuccino with goat milk. And so goat milk has this funky, like goat cheese. So with this really wild, fruity coffee, it was really fun. Not for everybody, but like a super interesting drink to try. So those are my 2 earliest, most prominent, but then most recent notable coffees I've had.
So milks then are going to make a big difference too.
It's another piece of it. Yeah. There's a whole world of milks. For me, whole milk is my favorite. I think you do want, I have steaming milk. I still do that at home, but in the coffee shop, you want that creamy microfoam. In my opinion, you want a nice creamy microfoam. So sometimes to get a really good steam where you can make a pretty heart or swan and all these things you see in cups, you want a milk that has some fat, some sugar in it. So that works with chemistry and really helps make this creamy drink. So yeah, you have some alternative drinks that are really good too. There are a lot of good things in the nut milk space that there's definitely, you can go either side on those, but there's like oat milk. For a lot of times, like when I was working in coffee, oat milk was the recommendation. And there's almond milk and cashew milk, which are also good too. But if I'm looking for that in say Whole Foods, I'd look for the barista version, which typically would have some fat and sugar that'll help it steam better.
I do oat milk, but I didn't know there was a barista version. So this is good to know.
Yeah. It's funny because like Rochelle will mainly do an oat milk or an almond milk. And some of them are just zero everything. It's just nuts and water. But when you get a little bit of that fat and sugar in there, it helps it steam a bit better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to insert my best cup of coffee that I've ever had.
Okay, yeah, let's hear yours.
So So it was actually on the Uncompany retreat and you made it.
No way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Really?
That whatever that pour over was that you made that morning, that was my like eye-opening, like, oh, you can just do a pour over and it tastes amazing.
No way.
So yeah, I immediately
You
went
remember what
home
kind
and
of coffee it was?
I do not remember what
Okay.
it was. I just remember it was
Yeah.
really, really good. I tend to
Yeah.
drink my coffee black anyway. And yeah, it was kind of fruity. I remember that.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I could taste it and it was light. It had a lightness to it. Wasn't
Love
overly
that.
oily or anything. So then I went home and bought a hand grinder and a Chemex.
Okay, this
And
is amazing. Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm still hand grinding. I'm looking for, a Father's Day present, maybe from my
There we
from my
go.
wife for like an electric grinder. But yeah.
Okay.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so
best
special.
cup of coffee that I've ever had.
Oh my gosh. I'm honored. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you got a Chemex and a grinder and you're off to the
know.
races. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
inspiring.
I'm learning the first few times that I made it at home, though, it was not good. It's
That's
gotten better over
Part of
time.
the course.
Yeah. It was
That's part of it.
I didn't know what I was doing at all with the pour over
Oh, yeah.
situation. It was always just Mr. Coffee for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
better.
That's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Mari. Mari, same answer, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
JK.
Yes. I don't remember. I
What do you
remember
think?
you making, because I remember being like, my coffee's terrible. Probably that trip I took in Italy in college, because that was
Yeah.
the first one, and probably a cappuccino. But I remember it was also just, obviously the location and the time of my life where just everything kind of felt magical and flavorful.
Yeah.
But I remember it being just, well, it was at a little like walk up bar where it was, again, intimidating because everyone's like shuffling around. And I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
But just standing outside and drinking it, and I remember when I came back from that trip and then I moved to Atlanta, just ordering, like getting myself a little espresso machine, probably just like the cheapest one possible, and a little stack of little espresso cups and making it all. And then I was just drinking way too much espresso because I was small. I was just like, and that began the me drinking a lot of espresso and Americanos. But that was probably my turning point for coffee for sure. And
That's
then
awesome.
cool to bookmark.
Honestly, yeah, when you said Italy, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everything's magical. It's romanticized. You're fighting the crowd with people who know what they are going to get.
That's when I was like, I think I was 21 too. So it was like, I'm such an adult person. I'm here and I'd saved up all night. I'd been working as a bank teller for 2 years to save all this money to take this trip. And it was just this like, I've arrived.
Yeah, you've arrived.
I drink my coffee with lemon rinds now. It's so fancy.
Okay. Also, I have to ask, I've never done that. So is it like a shot? Do you keep the rind afterwards? What is the method with this?
So I'm trying to remember, but it was like an espresso and it was just the what is it called? Like the zest where they kind of like twist it and then it's like around the edge.
That's cool. All right.
Yeah. It was.
I'm going to have to try that now. That's
try it out.
Cool.
Try it out.
Yeah. Wow. It makes me think of cocktail culture where you just the rim with the zest and sweet in there.
I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, maybe they did that for you to have it afterwards. So you don't have a coffee breath. It's like a palate cleanser. I don't know. Maybe it was really big in the early 2000s and all the Italians are going to hear this and be like, oh, we don't do that anymore. It's lame.
So 2000s.
So 2000s.
That's awesome though. I'm going to have to try it though. I really am. I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay, cool. And you said that drink was like called a 1-in-1?
Yeah, it's a 1-in-1. It might have originated in California at that coffee shop, Cat and Cloud. It's essentially for baristas as you're dialing in your espresso machine in the morning and you want to taste the espresso straight and then with milk. Because the ratio kind of works out to something like a cappuccino since just one shot of espresso and some milk, like a macchiato, and then just a shot of espresso.
I'm gonna go to Fountain, order that.
That'd be great.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap it up here with what we normally call our lightning round.
Oh, wow.
We just got a few questions here. Simple. Just first thing that comes to your head. No pressure. Okay. These aren't like big discussion points. First one is, what do you think the future of coffee is? Like, where's it going to...
Lightning round. Future of coffee. Well, it's gone in this really experimental infusing with fruit and all these different type of processing methods. I think it's been accepted by large. So I'm interested to see what goes next. Maybe just injected right into our veins. That's my answer.
Do you think that people who say they don't like coffee just haven't met the right cup yet?
I've met a good amount of tea people. I have to be considerate. Sometimes I'll just assume everybody's had it. So I'll say, no, I don't think so. Some people may never turn to the dark side. maybe if I give them a cup of coffee, that could change. So if you insert
That's probably
my
it.
coffee into the equation, that might do it.
All right. So what is your guilty pleasure coffee order? Not your like fancy barista coffee order, but the one where you're just like, nobody knows me in here. So
Yeah, right off the
Just
top of my
place.
head, I know exactly. It's Starbucks. It's a seasonal. It's a chai. It's like a brown sugar oat milk chai. It's very sugary, so cozy. It's a treat. If I'm out shopping, I'm like, okay, yeah, nobody's looking. That's fine if people look, but that's my go-to. A chai, brown sugar, something or other with oat milk.
okay,
Super, yeah,
nice.
Mhm.
All right,
see all these five. Okay, keep firing.
two more. We got two more here.
Okay.
So this one actually comes from Maari. Maari, do you want to preface this one from your time in Seattle?
Yes. Okay. So I lived in Seattle for a couple of years. I got to enjoy all the Seattle coffee culture. And there was Seattle, there were these little things, and I bring it up to all the baristas that I talk to. I might have talked to you about this, but they had these little coffee. They were like phone booths, like no bigger than two people could stand inside of them. And they were in the middle of parking lots. And so people just drive around. Very, very good business, low footprint. But there was a white coffee. And it was it was called white coffee. It was so good. It was like kind of very, very nutty and very creamy, super, super caffeinated. Like if you had one, you are just like, whoa, my head's going to explode. So you got to be cautious. And so when I left Seattle, I was able to find it anywhere else. And so I remember asking somebody, where is your white coffee? And they had no idea what I was talking about. And one of the baristas, Bean Traders Coffee, which is another great coffee shop in Durham, he was very educated, and he was like, oh, white coffee is essentially unroasted coffee beans or very slightly roasted coffee beans. And people don't really use them that way. But apparently in Seattle, there was this white coffee trend. I don't know if they still have it out there, but it was so good.
Yeah.
This is an untapped business opportunity for somebody who wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering if you'd heard of it.
I don't think I've heard of that. When you say white coffee, it makes me feel like it'd be very sour or something. Was it sweet? Was it sour?
I remember it being very nutty, cashewy type of thing.
Almost like eating the seeds.
Yeah. And it was made with a cream, or like a latte kind of with that.
Okay. I'm not super familiar with it, and I don't even know what all it is, but now I'm going to have to go down the rabbit hole and find out what that's all about.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe it's untapped.
Maybe
it's just a thing somewhere. I wonder if it comes from a certain culture, like where it comes from. Just Seattle.
Let me know what you find out.
Yeah, maybe it's just the Seattle parking lot coffee culture.
So not too far. I'll drive up the coast. Need to get back there too. I love it there.
That was good, Maari. You stumped the coffee guy.
You got me. Yeah, I know. Nice one.
Yeah. All right, one last one.
Okay.
Settle this once and for all for those of us out here that don't know any better. Should you keep your coffee in the freezer?
Okay. Just yes or no answer.
Kind of yes or no, but you can give some subtlety.
Okay. I'll say, from my opinion, you don't have to. I think if you are, it needs to be vacuum sealed. I've read a little bit about this. So if it's just in the freezer, the moisture can get in there. You don't want moisture to get in your beans. So if it is vacuum sealed, can make it last a really long time. But if you're going to enjoy it within a couple of weeks, I think you can leave it out. We have a vacuum canister Fellow, just sucks out all of the oxygen, which is really great. That's another good option that I would probably do before throwing in the freezer. But if you have some super rare coffee from 2020 that's geisha and roasted by the best roaster you ever heard of, you can throw that in the freezer, airtight, and it should make it last longer. But again, not a scientist. That's my best answer, best guess.
Well, this has been a really enjoyable hour. It flew by. Once we got into the nuance, I learned so much. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm glad. This was super fun for me too. Y'all were great. It was fun hearing your coffee stories and white coffee. I mean, stumped.
Let's go. This is it. This is a new business opportunity. We're going to get run with it.
I know. We might have to. I'll send you the business plan. We'll get it all worked out.
Okay.
All right, cool. So before we leave, we've mentioned Fellow a couple of times here, but can you just tell us a little bit about how people can find out more about Fellow, find out more about the product offerings and all that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go check out fellowproducts.com. We go direct B2C. You can find us in Crate and Barrel, Nordstrom, Williams Sonoma. We're about to be launching in Target. We're in Target now. More to come. We do a lot of B2B. What I work in is the customization side. So if you want customized mugs for your company, reach out to us. There's a wholesale portion of our website too. You can reach out there. But yeah, we're all there. All the innovative coffee products. And another thing, just on the side note, we have great coffees if you want to order direct from our site. So we've got you covered for everything coffee. So there you go.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, that was a fun conversation. We knew it was going to be enjoyable talking about coffee because it's part of our day, part of our ritual for a long time. So, John, what did you think about the conversation we had with Jonathan Stewart?
Right. Yeah. I mean, John, he's obviously very passionate about the subject of coffee. It's always fun to talk to someone who it has such a passion and desire to share it with everyone else. And I think that's one of the things I got from him was sort of that enthusiasm. And I learned a few things too along the way, a couple of things that I am doing wrong with my own morning coffee and some things that I'd like to improve, but I really enjoyed it. And it was also good to see, sort of a blast from a past, an old friend that we've known for a long time.
Yeah. So what are you going to quit doing with your normal coffee routine now?
Well, I think, there's two things for me. One, I'm going to experiment with methods. I tend to just be the type of person that dumps the coffee into the coffee pot, into the coffee maker, and then I push the button and I wait a few minutes and out comes the coffee. And that's good and that's fine. I've also got a Chemex. I do enjoy using it, but it does take more time. And so typically that's just my weekend sort of coffee when I have some time and there's not, the rush of things to get, everything ready in the morning. I might go buy a French press and I might go try, a couple of other options as well. I've never used there's this thing called a mocha pot, and he didn't mention this, but it's MOKA, and you put it on your stove and it bubbles up from the bottom. So there's that. And then I love Turkish coffee. I've never made it, but it's always been something that I'd like to try. It just seems so overwhelming to me, but yeah, I think the takeaway for me was just, experiment. I might try a few of these different things and see what I can learn from them. The other takeaway that I had really was the community aspect of it, which was something that John was very passionate about. Being a barista, he liked to see his regulars when they would come in, just getting out in public. And this is one of my pet peeves for those of us who work from home all the time, is just having a reason to get up, get dressed, leave the house, go grab a cup of coffee, say hi to some people, maybe meet some new people in your town, your community, and then go on about your day. I think that would be really nice for me to start to do that again. I used to do that more. I think pre-pandemic, I used to sort of go like, hey, I want to go out and just get some coffee. And I should probably take that back up again. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I mean, it's true. The ritual part of it and the community part of it, when he brought that up, I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it's true. It's like when I first started freelancing, it's 15 years ago. I mean, I lived in coffee shops. Like my office was all the coffee shops, and I had them strategically placed. I knew where to go, when, and based on the traffic flow, because I was there so often. I knew the baristas, and we talked about how, like, when I lived in Atlanta, how I actually went camping with some of them because I spent way too much time. But it was like such a huge part of my community. And that was cool for him to bring that up and how important that still was, because yeah, it's like, the coffee culture has really been built around that idea of that kind of, what do they call it? Like this, the third place, the second place where you go and you hang out. So I thought that was a really cool takeaway. The takeaway to things I took away, one that was very tactical, was just to start using filtered water, which seems really small, but for some reason I never thought about it being such a critical element. But of course, coffee is largely water. What is it they say? Like dark brown water.
Yeah.
Like you said last. So, and if you put crappy water in your coffee, then your coffee's not going to taste as good. I know it seems like a really dumb moment, but I didn't think about it like that. So I am going to start using filtered water whenever I'm making drip coffee or any kind of coffee, and just see what the difference is. And I think that'll be really cool. And it's funny. It's like we do make coffee every single day. At least it's part of our ritual. And it's the same kind of thing when someone talks about, like, you should have a really nice mattress because you sleep all the time. It's like, you should have a nice coffee pot. You should have a nice coffee setup because you're consuming this every single day. So one of the things I also wanted to add was like starting to look at the coffee products that I have, the beans. Am I checking the dates when I'm picking it up? It's like, I wouldn't go and buy a rotten cucumber and chop it up into a salad. Why would I buy rotten coffee? So again, like some of the smaller things that he brought up, thinking about, like, coffee is a plant, right? It is something that you are consuming. It is organic. So thinking about the dates behind the coffee that you're purchasing, and then also the type of water you're using when you're making it. I thought that those were really huge, smart, tactical takeaways, and I'm going to start incorporating them in my coffee rituals.
Yeah. Freshness matters, I guess.
Of course.
And, yeah, it makes sense, right? And clean water helps too.
Yeah.
You could also, sort of experiment with the different types of water too. Not that you want to go buy bottled water just to make your coffee, but it would be interesting to do maybe an experiment one night where you have the same beans and you try it with a couple of different types of bottled water and then your own filtered water and then water from the tap, just so you get a different idea and see if you can tell a difference. I don't know.
Like a little science experiment.
Sure. Yeah. Little science experiment. I feel like these are the types of things that John would go do. He would go,
100%.
he would go out.
He's probably doing it right now.
Yeah. Like 10 sources of water. And
he's like, some Gatorade mixed with, let's just.
Exactly. We're going to wrap this one up right here. We had a really great time talking to John. We really appreciate his time. If you're looking to connect with Fellow, you can find a link to their website in our description below. Thanks to everyone for listening today. And we'll be back in a few weeks with another episode. Until then, I'm John.
And I'm Maari.
And we're reminding you that winners can quit and quitters can win. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.